Don Cornelius built an empire with Soul Train, a cultural juggernaut that revolutionized black entertainment. His smooth baritone voice, impeccably tailored suits, and unwavering commitment to class and sophistication made him the godfather of televised black music. Soul Train wasn't just a show, it was a movement, a sacred space where the best and brightest in R&B and soul could showcase their artistry. It gave America its first real taste of black coolness on a national stage. Cornelius was a visionary, but he was also a gatekeeper. And there were certain artists who just didn't fit his mold. One of them was Rick James. Rick James was a fireball of raw energy, a self-proclaimed super freak who had no interest in playing by the rules. His music was loud, brash, and drenched in a mix of funk, rock, and R&B that made him a hit with younger audiences but a thorn in the side of traditionalists. His persona, braided hair, tight leather pants, and an attitude that screamed rebellion, clashed hard with Cornelius's old-school sensibilities. While Soul Train had embraced funk legends like James Brown and Sly Stone, Rick James represented something even more volatile. He wasn't just funk. He was the living embodiment of excess, a tornado of hedonism, controversy, and unpredictability. James first graced the Soul Train stage in 1979, performing his breakout hit, You and I. The crowd loved him. His energy was infectious, his confidence undeniable. But Don Cornelius? He wasn't feeling it. Though always the consummate professional, Cornelius' body language and clipped interview responses told a different story. He respected talent, but James represented a shift that he wasn't prepared to embrace.
Well, I've been wrong before, brother. You know, I know I said you would never be nothing, but you know, now I gotta eat my words.
I said the same thing about you, and I was true.
Rick James was bringing street culture, raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic, into Cornelius's polished universe. And that, in Cornelius's eyes, was a problem. To understand their friction, you have to look at who Don Cornelius was. Before Soul Train, he was a journalist, a man who valued precision, poise, and an almost militant control over his image. His show was carefully curated to elevate black artists, not to glorify the pimp, hustler, and gangster aesthetic that James seemed to revel in. Cornelius had spent years battling against the negative stereotypes that mainstream America tried to attach to black culture. He wanted sophistication, elegance, and a seat at the table, not chaos. But James was chaos.
On videos. And we're not doing this for the sake of because we enjoy doing it. We're doing it because it's part of the art. And we're being excluded from the art.
I hope it's as successful for you.
So save your money, because you will be seeing us on the motion pictures.
Despite Cornelius' personal reservations, Rick James would return to Soul Train multiple times in the early 80s. His appearances were electrifying. He performed hits like Super Freak and Give It To Me Baby, bringing an unrelenting energy that made it impossible for the dancers to keep still. Audiences were mesmerized. But every time he sat down for an interview with Cornelius, the tension was palpable.
I did my song, everybody went crazy, and he came up to me to do a little interview while I was standing there. He says, yeah, well, I don't know why everybody is making so much of a fuss about this thing called rap.
Cornelius often appeared visibly uncomfortable, offering polite but restrained conversation, sometimes even cutting the interview short. James, never one to hold his tongue, would playfully jab at Cornelius's stiffness, challenging the show's pristine aesthetic with his blunt, streetwise charm. What made their dynamic even more intriguing was the fact that both men, in their own ways, were revolutionaries. Cornelius had fought tooth and nail to bring Soul Train to life in an era where black television was an afterthought. He had changed the game. James, meanwhile, was pushing the boundaries of black music, refusing to be boxed into a single genre and unapologetically embracing the rebellious spirit of rock and funk. They were both pioneers, but they were playing different games. Cornelius had a deep-seated disdain for hip-hop
That was
and
the
street
final
culture
straw.
that accompanied it. As the 80s progressed and hip-hop began taking over the airwaves, he resisted. He saw rap as crude, unpolished, and lacking the musical depth of soul and R&B. To him, it wasn't an art form, it was noise. He allowed some rap acts on Soul Train, but his disdain was always evident. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five appeared on the show in 1981, but Cornelius's interview with them was strained. He asked questions that barely masked his disapproval, making it clear that he saw rap as a passing fad, something unworthy of the Soul Train legacy. Rick James, on the other hand, had no problem embracing the streets. His music spoke directly to the raw, unfiltered experiences of Black America in a way that was far more direct than Cornelius's carefully curated playlist. He wasn't afraid of controversy. He thrived on it. He saw himself as a rebel, a voice for the underdogs and the misfits. And unlike Cornelius, he understood that the future of black music wasn't just about keeping up appearances, it was about evolution, about embracing the grit and the glory of the culture as it was, not just as it wanted to be seen. Cornelius and James were bound to clash. The interviews grew more awkward. Cornelius's stiff, almost forced professionalism would meet James's wild, unpredictable antics, and the results were always fascinating. James didn't care for industry politics or respectability politics. He spoke his mind.
I was a little apprehensive, you know. I was a little, I mean, it's different playing places where you never played, you know, and you don't know how the reaction is going to be, you know.
He flirted with the dancers. He made jokes that were just a little too risque for the primetime slot. And Cornelius, always the composed host, would grit his teeth and push forward, visibly eager to wrap things up. Despite their differences, both men left an undeniable mark on black entertainment. Cornelius gave the world a platform that transformed the careers of countless artists, and James proved that funk and rock could coexist in ways that no one had ever imagined. Ironically, James's music would go on to heavily influence hip-hop, the very genre that Cornelius tried so hard to resist. Artists like MC Hammer, Jay-Z, and countless others sampled James's work, keeping his legacy alive in a way that even Cornelius couldn't ignore. As the years went on, the tensions faded into history. Soul Train eventually made peace with hip-hop, albeit reluctantly, while Rick James continued to ride the highs and lows of fame. By the time Cornelius stepped away from Soul Train in the early 2000s, the landscape of black music had completely shifted. The elegance and polish he had championed had given way to a rawer, grittier aesthetic. He had fought to keep the doors open for black artists, but he couldn't control how they walked through them. Rick James and Don Cornelius were two sides of the same coin, both trailblazers, both passionate about their vision, but ultimately on different wavelengths. Cornelius wanted to elevate black entertainment through sophistication. James wanted to elevate it through unfiltered, unapologetic expression. Their friction wasn't just personal, it was a reflection of a larger battle within black music itself: tradition versus evolution, polish versus raw energy, respectability versus rebellion. In the end, both men got what they wanted. Cornelius built a legacy that remains untouchable. James created a sound that transcended generations. And though they may have never truly seen eye to eye, their interactions on Soul Train remain one of the most fascinating culture clashes in black entertainment history. The smooth-talking host and the wild, untamed funkster, two titans, locked in an unspoken battle for the soul of the music they both loved.
Well, I've been wrong before, brother. You know, I know I said you would never be nothing, but, you know, now I gotta eat my words,
I said the
right?
same thing about you, and I was true.